Crystal, I'd like to say you get the name right.
Woo! I'm going back and forth, Lonnie, so Lonnie.
German name. Thank you. Yeah, not really good at this, so work with me here. Thank you for this opportunity to speak before you and tell you the reason for suggesting the new elementary school to be named after my teacher, Ada Robinson. I first met Ada Robinson when I was in second grade at elementary, near Clinton Elementary. I remember her warm smile and her greeting us in the hallway. I wasn't one of her students yet, but she learned my name. We moved yet again on to other schools in the district, from McPhee to Park, to Hawthorne, to Randolph. Sixth grade, I came back to Clinton. Ada was my teacher. By sixth grade, the abuse was worse than ever than it had ever been. I didn't have any physical marks to show I was an abused child, but abused nevertheless. I spent my life moving from one rundown property to the next, always waiting for the next eviction notice. Never staying put very long. Those 3-day eviction notices change as a child. You grab what you have to, but most of your stuff, your prized possessions, are just gone. So there I was, a sixth grader at Clinton Elementary, back at least to a school I had been before, back to a person who knew my name. This isn't a unique story for the children of Clinton. My story is like many who come before me and still come to this day. The difference in my story is that Ada Robinson was my teacher. She saw through the ratty clothes, the uncombed hair, the worn out shoes. She treated me as I belonged. We expect a great education at LPS. But these educators need to do so much more than teach reading and writing. Sorry. This is exactly what Ada Robinson did that year. She taught me right where I was, without judgment. She made me feel self-worth. She showed me respect and expected us to show her respect in return. I know it's hard to imagine, but my parents were not the show up at teacher conferences type of parents. Their goal was probably never to meet my teacher. This wasn't possible with Ada. She made herself known, even coming to my house for supper, as she did with most of her students. I had never had a teacher in my home before. I had never had a teacher know my parents. She gave me a sort of self-confidence that could never be undone. School, for the first time, was a place I wanted to be, a place I knew I was safe, a place where they knew my name. It took me 5 more years to go to the police to report the abuse I was enduring, but without her in my mind, I would have never been able to tell my story, to stop it for me and for my younger brother. Fast forward 12 years. My wife and I rent a little rundown house in Clinton neighborhood. My son is starting Clinton Elementary. We walk through the halls, and the memories of a time gone by come flooding back. Then I run into her, that teacher, the teacher. Miss Robinson comes up to me and gives me a great big hug, calls me by name, and asks me about my life. She remembered me. Out of the hundreds of students through her door since I had been there, she remembered me, and she was proud of me. Ada Robinson was proud of me. A child with my background that meant the world. We stayed in that little rundown house for years, refusing to move, making sure my children kept their prized possessions. When the time came that we could buy a home, we looked no place else than Clinton neighborhood, where my teacher was, where a few happy moments of my childhood existed. She knew each of my children's names, still knows them today, even though none of them were in her classes and she was not their teacher. Ada, You will never know the extent that year meant to me. But this is why her name needs to be put on a building to tell the kids like me, we will remember your name just as Ada remembered mine. My name is Robert Evans, and I'm a Lincoln High graduate, class of 1992, and thank you for your time.